Are narcissistic or abusive men playing the victim, or do they actually believe they're the victim? Because honestly, it feels impossible to hold both ideas at the same time. Hello, cognitive dissonance, eh? You watch him flip the script, and part of you thinks, he has to be doing this on purpose, right? And then you look at his face and his tone and this whole wounded performance, and part of you is like, but he looks like he believes it. And the amount of women that believe him, it's wild. I was one of them, by the way, no judgment, but not anymore. And that contradiction destroys your clarity, because if he truly believes he's the harmed one, maybe you're being harsh. Maybe he's not manipulative. Maybe he's genuinely broken or confused. But I'm telling you, the truth is so much more complicated. It's complex. It's not a contradiction at all. It only looks like one when you don't actually understand all of the layers and the nuance. Now, abusive men thrive on you not understanding those layers, which is exactly why I'm going to break them down so it finally clicks. I'm Lisa Sonni. I'm a toxic and abusive relationship expert and a certified coach, and I teach women how these dynamics actually work beneath the surface. Now, if this is making things click for you, hit subscribe, because I talk about this stuff every week in ways that make you finally understand exactly what you've been dealing with. Book a session with me if you want to actually process this further after you watch, okay? So victimhood, right? It is absolutely a strategy, but strategy does not mean that he's actually sitting in the bathroom rehearsing lines before he walks out and then he cries on cue, right? It's not always, ooh, how can I hurt her? Strategy just means that he's spent years learning that when he shifts into that poor me persona, everybody backs off, right? Partners stop being angry, his mom soothes him, an ex returns, and the world ultimately lets him off the hook. So over time, his nervous system wires itself around this pattern, right? Discomfort is a threat. Threat equals immediate pivot into victimhood, and victimhood equals restored control. And that's what they want. This is not self-expression, and it is not vulnerability. It is a manipulative pattern that has been reinforced again and again because it works. That's why they all sound the same. He leans on it because he knows, consciously or instinctively, that if he looks hurt, you're going to prioritize his emotions over your own needs. That's the strategic part. It's not always calculated in advance. Sometimes it is, but it is absolutely chosen in the moment, and the choice is always going to be self-protective. And this is where one of the biggest myths trip women up, right? The myth that if something is unconscious or automatic, then he can't help it. People confuse unconscious with uncontrollable, as if a fast reaction somehow makes it honest. But automatic actually just means practiced. You can flip a light switch 1,000 times until your hand just reaches for it without thinking, but every single flip was still a choice that created the habit. That's what this is. Do you understand? Like a rehearsed survival tactic that became second nature because it kept him comfortable. It's not going to let him off the hook. Automatic doesn't mean innocent. It means that he's done it so many times that the switch flips before he even notices himself reaching for it. But the first 100 times, those were choices. And choices matter even when they get fast, even if they feel automatic. Now, here's the other half of the truth. He believes his own story, and it's not because he's confused or innocent or lacking in intelligence. Now, they're not all intelligent. They're not all unintelligent. This isn't me saying, though, that he believes his own lies. I hear that all the time. That is not what this is. You can't believe your own lie. That's not how lies work. That's a contradiction in and of itself. He believes it because the story protects him from the truth that he refuses to face. Think of it as like two different layers of knowing, right? On the surface, he knows exactly what he did. He knows he screamed. He knows he lied, slammed the door, broke the object, hid the messages, crossed the line, cheated, whatever. This isn't psychosis. It isn't delusion. It's not delusion. And it's not memory loss. They are in no way delusional in the clinical sense. I'd say more like delulu in the slang sense. Men like this are not walking around unsure of what happened. They are crystal clear on the events themselves. But the second layer is where the distortion actually starts to really come out. And it's the layer where he interprets the meaning of his actions. And that's where the victim identity really comes from. So instead of something like, I yelled and that wasn't okay, he jumps to, I yelled because you pushed me. Or I lied because you're too sensitive. I reacted because anyone would have. He shifts the meaning so that his behavior is never about his choices or his lack of empathy or his entitlement, which is really the center of this. It's always a reaction to your flaws, your tone, your unmet responsibility to always center him and keep him comfortable. This is why you actually also have to dismantle another myth, right? The idea that if he truly believes what he's saying, then maybe it's not a lie. This is where a lot of women actually get trapped because he doesn't look like someone telling a lie, right? He looks like someone defending his last shred of dignity. But emotional conviction isn't evidence. A man can feel deeply wronged because of entitlement, right? It has replaced reality, essentially, in his mind, not because the facts support him. Belief doesn't make something true. People are wrong all the time, right? And they believe it. Belief just tells you how invested he is in avoiding the truth and avoiding accountability. Now, abusive men often look so sincere because the story that they tell themselves is the only thing separating their ego from collapse. The intensity that you see, the conviction, it's not honesty. He's protecting himself. Now, here's actually where the contradiction really just falls apart. He doesn't see these distortions as lies because he has spent years rejecting anything that would make him accountable, right? He doesn't want the truth, so he doesn't let it in. It just doesn't exist. This is an innocent self-deception, and it's not confusion. It's not a man who just doesn't know better. And that's how they pitch themselves, right? I don't get it. It is a deliberate refusal to face anything that threatens his comfort, his self-image, or his sense of superiority. He filters reality the same way that my 9-year-old filters out vegetables on his plate. Anything that he doesn't want to deal with gets pushed to the edge and completely ignored. An abusive man ignores and minimizes and twists anything that's going to paint him in a crappy light because admitting the truth would require actual emotional work that he has no intention of doing. He's not wrestling with guilt. He's not struggling with shame in the way that people imagine. Narcissists are shameless. It is not a shame-based disorder at all. That is an outdated myth that was never true. He's avoiding insight because insight gets in the way of what he wants. He wants what he wants, everyone else be damned, right? You're just collateral damage if you get in the way of him serving his own needs. There's no wounded little boy running the show. It's not immaturity. It's not trauma. What's running the show is actually entitlement, self-interest, and a worldview where he is always the injured party. They are masters at playing the victim. And this is really what women have to understand. He's not confused about who's doing what. He's just really invested in a version of events that keeps him blameless, powerful, and morally justified. There's a moment that nobody talks about, but every survivor has seen, right? It's that split second before he flips the script, right? You know that moment where you can literally watch the awareness cross his face and you know that he knows he's cornered, right? That he's about to be held accountable, that he's losing control of the narrative. And in that moment, he chooses the only story that has ever saved him, right? I'm the real victim here. You see the decision if you're looking for a second. It's small, but it's there. And once he makes it, he throws everything at you, right? Tears, self-pity, blame, defeated tone, anger, gaslighting, rage, woundedness, whatever. But it always starts with that tiny choice to dodge responsibility and weaponize his own vulnerability. And over time, it's so habitual that it feels automatic. So that's how it looks to you. So I know he looks sincere. Trust me, I've seen it with my own eyes too. But sincerity means nothing if the whole thing is built on entitlement, not truth. And this is ultimately where the myth of victimhood equals emotional honesty needs to die. Women look at his shaking hands, his cracking voice, the sad eyes, the outrage even, and they assume that this pain means that he's telling the truth. But abusive men use emotion the same way they use charm or anger, right? It's just leverage. Emotional intensity isn't the same as emotional honesty. A tantrum can look a hell of a lot like a breakdown. Fear of losing control can be heartbreak. Manipulation can even look like remorse, right? And people assume that belief and performance can't happen at the same time, right? They either believe it or they don't. But they absolutely can. He can perform distress because it works on you. And he can believe the story that creates that distress because it protects him from seeing himself clearly. The performance is strategic. Now, the belief is totally self-serving, but neither has anything at all to do with the truth. So this is where a lot of women get trapped because his victimhood actually protects his entitlement. So if you challenge him, he feels so attacked. If you ask for respect, which he feels so entitled to, he feels controlled. When you set a boundary, he feels so rejected, right? You say no, he feels deprived of what he's entitled to. He's not operating from insecurity. He is operating from the belief that discomfort means that there's been an injustice to him. That's why this victim act lands so hard, because he genuinely sees himself as wronged by anything that interrupts his comfort, his peace, and him getting ultimately what he wants. And the moment he presents as this fragile person or he's devastated, your empathy kicks in. Your fawn response is right there. And you shift into self-blame because you've been conditioned to do exactly that. You don't see manipulation. You see a hurting man, probably a hurting man that you love. Although, to be fair, my personal belief, love does not coexist when you are stuck in a trauma bond. Abuse and love, they don't go together. This is the trap, right? He uses all of these emotional parts of you to basically stabilize the distorted parts of him. You are a resource. So yeah, he's playing the victim. And yeah, he believes he's the victim. But you're not going to convince him that he's not the victim. He performs it on the outside because it gets him what he wants. And he believes it on the inside because he's repeated it so many times that it feels true. But I still want to reiterate that doesn't mean that he believes his own lies. That's not the right language. Truth and belief are not the same thing. He believes the narrative because the narrative preserves his ego. It allows him to harm you without ever seeing himself as the kind of man who harms people. I'm not abusive. That's ridiculous, right? It lets him maintain his entitlement and avoid any emotional labor. It lets him cast you as the crazy, dramatic, unreasonable, cruel one, right? You need to soften. You need to forgive. You need to get over the past. You need to stay and let him control you. Now, before I close, I want to hit one more myth that honestly destroys a lot of women. The idea that the truth has to be in the middle, right? When one person distorts reality and the other tries to be fair, the middle actually isn't the truth. The middle is the place where his distortion drags you into self-blame. So if he bends the facts to avoid accountability and you soften to keep the peace, the midpoint between manipulation and fairness is actually entrapment. Don't ever assume shared fault just because he tells his version with some level of confidence. Confidence is not accuracy. It's just entitlement with a lot of volume, okay? The real bottom line that I want you to sit with, he is both the performer and the believer. It's strategic and it's sincere. But sincere doesn't mean legitimate. It just means that he's emotionally invested in a lie because the truth threatens everything that he's built his identity on. And a man who will distort reality to protect his ego will always be dangerous, not because he can't see the truth, but because he refuses to see it. So if you're in the process of rebuilding the parts of yourself that got twisted up by this dynamic, join one of my 2 group coaching programs. It's where I help you untangle all of these patterns. You get your voice back, your boundaries, and your sense of self. And don't forget to comment and subscribe.